All right, let's put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. Jon Rothstein here on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page on this maiden voyage for a new podcast in the college basketball space. Want to remind you to hit that like button and always subscribe to us. We bring you content throughout the month of March and into the first week of April as we get set to digest, dissect, and offer some perspective on the world of college basketball. Later in this show, we will be joined by Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson. Also want you to jump into the YouTube chat. Give us your thoughts. Give us your questions as we count down towards Selection Sunday. We're going to get to all of you throughout this show and for every show thereafter. Lots to get to as we are now during championship week sampling college basketball each and every day. It is the greatest time on the calendar. And remember this, if the NCAA tournament is the entree for college basketball, then championship week is the charcuterie board. And now let's get to three big things. We start with the state of the number one seeds as we are just days away from Selection Sunday. One big thing I want to talk about right now as we look at the one seeds heading into Selection Sunday. Three programs, Auburn, Duke, and Houston, have separated themselves from everybody else. Three programs are in prime positions to be number one seeds on Selection Sunday. Auburn has been unequivocally the best team in the sport all season long. But I want to point this out. Auburn is not playing its best basketball going into the SEC tournament. And Auburn also is in a situation where defensively it has shown major regression in its last two games. In back-to-back losses last week against Texas A&M and Alabama, Auburn gave up an average of 88 points per game. As we take a look at the resume right here, 16-4 in quad one, projected as a number one seed. Auburn can't win a national championship and potentially can't get to a Final Four with the way that it's playing defense right now. And I want to point this out. The geographic advantage for Auburn, though, could be superior versus other teams in this NCAA tournament. Auburn set to be the one seed in the South. That means first and second round games in Lexington, and it means Sweet 16 and Elite Eight games in Atlanta, which is not that far from the Auburn campus. But Auburn right now clearly not playing its best. We will see what the Tigers have in store at this week's SEC tournament. Now, another team that is cemented to be a one seed is the team that I voted number one in the country this week with my AP Top 25 ballot, and that's the Duke Blue Devils. Now, one of the things I talked about the last time I did a show here, right here on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page, and we'll continue to do shows here for the foreseeable future and beyond, is that Duke unequivocally has the best roster in college basketball. Duke unequivocally has a generational talent in Cooper Flagg. And when I spoke to you last time, I talked about how I wanted to see Duke against a high-caliber opponent because of how weak the ACC was. Duke ripped through Illinois at Madison Square Garden a couple of weeks ago like a chainsaw through butter. Like a chainsaw through butter. And now you are looking at Duke being in position as the sport's most talented roster, as being a team that can win a national championship for the first time under somebody else than Mike Krzyzewski since he retired in 2022. There are two big keys, in my opinion, to Duke here moving forward, not just in the ACC tournament, but in the NCAA tournament. Tyrese Proctor has to be a consistent third scorer behind Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel. Proctor had an injury scare with his knee about a week and a half ago against Miami. He has come back into Duke's lineup. He is hitting double figures in each of those games. He is in a situation now where he is giving Duke a third scorer alongside those two players I just mentioned. Another thing about Duke that is a completely underrated storyline, in my opinion, entering the ACC tournament, the NCAA tournament, because he doesn't put up big stats, because he's not the person you're going to feature on offense, is Malik Brown. Malik Brown is somebody who defensively can give Duke a look like Emile Jefferson did 10 years ago when Coach K won a national title with Tyus Jones and Jahlil Okafor in 2015. Two keys for Duke to get to the Final Four and win a national title. Duke needs Tyrese Proctor to be a guy offensively behind Flagg and Knipple. Duke needs Malik Brown to be in a situation where he, for all intents and purposes, can give Duke what Emil Jefferson gave Duke 10 years ago. And the third team I referenced that is completely cemented is Houston. And we're going to talk to Kelvin Sampson here later on in the show. But I don't think people truly understand what Kelvin Sampson has done at Houston in terms of the magnitude of this accomplishment. Houston, in 2 years in the American Athletic Conference, has, and 2 years after leaving the American Athletic Conference in the Big 12, has a combined regular season record at Kansas, at Houston, a combined Big 12 regular season record of 34-4 in Big 12 regular season games. That's unfathomable to me. Now, you look at the dominance of Houston in this league. Houston has been 10-0 in road games this season. Houston is 27-4 after losing Jamal Shead. And you look, too, at what Houston has done from a seeding perspective. 11 years after Kelvin Sampson was hired, Houston is in position to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament for the third consecutive season. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's on Houston's administration to put Kelvin Sampson's name on the court at the Fertitta Center. It's something that needs to be done. But Houston, again, in Big 12 regular season games since leaving the American Athletic Conference, 34-4 over the last 2 years. So you got Auburn, you got Houston, and you got Duke cemented on the one line. How do things look after that? 3 teams from the SEC, Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama, all firmly in contention for that 4th number 1 seed. Florida, I think, is playing as well or better than anybody in the country. And look, this is a credit to Todd Golden, and I don't want to take a slight at the great young coach because he was on my top 5 for National Coach of the Year. But the way Florida is playing right now, and the way Florida is blowing teams out, won at Alabama last week, blew out Ole Miss last Saturday in Gainesville. Remember, Florida won earlier in the year at Auburn and also blew out Tennessee in Gainesville. How would we be forecasting this Florida team? And this is with no way disrespecting the job Todd Golden has done. He's one of the great young coaches in college basketball. If Billy Donovan was coaching the team, you would be talking about Florida as if it was the favorite to win a national championship. And I totally get that over time, people need to earn respect. You need to prove you can win in the NCAA tournament. You need to prove you can win big games in March. Florida didn't win an NCAA tournament game last year. It lost to Colorado in the round of 64, and it has not won an NCAA tournament game under Todd Golden. But I'll say this. If Billy Donovan was coaching this team and we saw Florida doing what it's doing right now, people would without question be putting Florida in the conversation among the favorites to win a national championship. Now, in terms of the 1 seeds, if Florida, Alabama, or Tennessee do not win the SEC tournament, it opens up the door for Michigan State. Michigan State, as of today, has 12 quad 1 victories. Only Auburn has more. Michigan State, as of today, is in position to get 15 quad 1 wins if it would win the Big Ten tournament Sunday on CBS. If that happens, if Michigan State is able to be in a situation where it can get the 15 quad 1 wins by Sunday at 5:30, and one of those other 3 teams, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, do not win the SEC tournament, Michigan State could be your 4th number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, that's the state of the 1 seeds. I want to get into something right now that I find fascinating this time of year because I'm always looking a little bit from the periphery, and I'm always looking a little bit deeper. I want to know what power conference teams are out there that are not projected to be 1s, 2s, maybe even 3 seeds that could break open a bracket and get to a Final Four. And I'm going to give you 3 of them right now. I'm starting with Oregon. Oregon under Dana Altman has always been a program that has been in a position where it could win and go deep in the NCAA tournament, and it multiple times did not need the best draw. 2013, Dana Altman went to the Sweet 16, lost to the eventual national champion Louisville, did it as a double-digit seed. 2019, Dana Altman went to the Sweet 16 as a double-digit seed. Remember that. And also lost to the national champion, lost a hard game against Virginia in the Sweet 16. You look at the tournament resume right there for Oregon. 23 wins, projected to be a 4 seed by our good friend Jerry Palm, and it already has looked some of the best teams in the country in the eye and beaten them. beat Alabama in Vegas, beat Texas A&M in Vegas. And again, right now, a 7-game winning streak for Oregon. Nate Biddle, coming off a 36-point, 12-rebound performance Sunday against Washington, anchors the middle. Jackson Shellstad, Peyton Pritchard 2.0, runs the point. You have a great perimeter defender in TJ Bamba. You have a microwave scorer in Keyshawn Barthelemy. Kwame Evans, another player on Oregon that has played terrific basketball during this winning streak. It wouldn't shock me at all to see a scenario where we have Oregon in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Now, another team, and people are going to say, well, this obviously isn't too much of a factor in terms of what we're going to see in terms of a brand name that's off the radar. But I think UConn is a team that a lot of people are not talking about that's in a situation where it is for the first time in 3 years flying under the radar. And look, I think people have punted on UConn from making a big run in the NCAA tournament because of what they saw at the start of February, maybe the losses to Seton Hall, maybe the losses to St. John's. That would be a colossal mistake. I'm going to tell you why. Since UConn landed from the Maui Invitational during Thanksgiving week, and it's had Liam McNeely in the lineup, UConn is 13-3. The 3 losses, the 2 to St. John's, who's a top 10 team, won the Big East regular season title outright, and that disappointing loss to Seton Hall. UConn has not lost with Liam McNeely in the lineup since. Now, it's not a surprise that since Liam McNeely came back into the lineup, Alex Caravan started to play better basketball. But 2, 3, and 4, UConn has answers. Solo ball, Liam McNeely, Alex Caravan. The issue for this team has been trying to get better guard play, which has been an issue all season long, and trying to get more out of the 5 spot. You knew you were not going to have Sonogo and Klingon like you had last year. You knew you were not going to, or 2 years ago, you knew you were not going to have Klingon and Samson Johnson like you had last year. But over UConn's current 4-game winning streak, the combination of Taris Reed, who was just this week named Big East 6th Man of the Year, and Samson Johnson is getting 21 and 15. And during this 4-game winning streak, Hassan Diarra, 28 assists, 9 turnovers. UConn is the 8th seed that no 1 seed wants to play. And you look at the potential matchups right now. If UConn is going to be playing Houston, or UConn is going to be playing Duke, or UConn is going to be playing against Auburn, that has Sunday of the first weekend at 5 o'clock Eastern on CBS going to 60 minutes written all over it. One other power conference team that can break open a bracket and you want to put on your radar is Ole Miss. Now, the SEC is having a changing of the landscape type year. It is the best power conference that we have ever seen in college basketball when you look at the potential volume of bids. But Ole Miss, once it gets out of the SEC and into the NCAA tournament, has the requisites, in my opinion, to do what Chris Beard's teams did at Texas Tech in 2018 and 2019. In 2018, Texas Tech went all the way to the Elite Eight, lost to Villanova, coached by our colleague and friend Jay Wright in the Elite Eight in Boston. And then the next year, we know, went to the national title game, lost to Virginia in overtime, had a 3-point lead with 12 seconds left. The rest is history. But when you think Ole Miss on a neutral court, similar to what I said about Dan Hurley, similar to what I said about Dana Altman, you're going to be going up against Chris Beard. You're going to be going up against Mark Adams' defense, the same staff that took Texas Tech to an Elite Eight and a national title game in back-to-back years. Texas Tech was one of the teams that came out of nowhere those 2 seasons. I think people knew they were good, but they didn't obviously feel there was a situation where Texas Tech could go that far. Ole Miss could do the same thing if the draw is right. 6 players, average in double figures for the Rebels, led by veteran guard Sean Padula, who could become a star in this NCAA tournament. And of those 6 scorers who average in double figures, they're all juniors, seniors, or COVID seniors. So you got 3 teams from power conferences that could break open a bracket. Oregon, UConn, Ole Miss. Remember, hit that like button. Please, obviously, join us here on this maiden voyage and beyond. Jon Rothstein here on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page on this new podcast venture. Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson going to join us shortly, but also want to hear from you, want to hear your comments and questions in the chat. We will be with you also here later in the week and throughout the NCAA tournament. Want to wrap up this first segment now and give you something that makes championship week really, really special. And that's the element of a bid stealer, because bid stealers are something that obviously are a major part of the bubble this time of the year. And we had 5 of them last year. And this is why, if you are a bubble team right now, you got to be afraid. You got to be really afraid. Because last season, these 5 teams found a way to win their conference tournaments if they're not being projected to make the NCAA tournament and find a way into the bracket on Selection Sunday. UAB out of the American, NC State out of the ACC, Duquesne out of the A-10, New Mexico out of the Mountain West, and Oregon out of the now defunct Pac-12. So I'm giving you 4 bid stealers, and what I mean is this. You have to keep this tongue-in-cheek. These are teams that if I had to pick the best chance of them winning their conference tournament, these would be the teams. I'm not picking them to win their conference tournament. I'm going to give you 2 out of the American Conference, North Texas and UAB. These are the 2 and the 3 seeds out of the American Athletic Conference. Memphis is the only cemented at-large team out of the AAC. UAB won this tournament last year. UAB has went to multiple NCAA tournaments under Andy Kennedy, and UAB again has a star in Yaxel Lendeborg, who could be a March Madness darling once again. North Texas, coached by one of the great defensive coaches in our game that not enough people know about, in Ross Hodge. He was a top lieutenant to Grant McCaslin before Grant McCaslin took the Texas Tech job. Now, in the Big East, it's a little bit different because this team has been in a situation where it's had big moments this year, and that's Villanova. Villanova is a team that has beaten St. John's, has beaten UConn, has beaten Marquette decisively, and has also beaten Xavier decisively. All of those teams are NCAA tournament teams, or at least projected to be close in the Big East. Villanova also took Creighton to the wire, and it took a bank shot from the corner by Stephen Ashworth to keep Villanova from winning that game. Now, Villanova is also maybe the most mercurial team in the Big East, because for all the great wins that I mentioned, Villanova's lost to Columbia. Villanova's lost to Virginia. Villanova has also lost to St. Joe's. And you look now at the resume for Villanova. What's dragging the Wildcats down right now are the losses that this team suffered in Quad 3 and Quad 4. Now, Villanova is talented enough to win 4 games in 4 days at the Big East tournament. It has the nation's leading scorer in Eric Dixon. It has a dynamite 2-guard in Wooga Poplar. Jordan Longino is a very good veteran player. Jameer Brickus has had moments. But is Villanova going to be good enough to do that 4 times in 4 days at Madison Square Garden? It's now or never for Kyle Neptune in this program, which has showed this season what it's capable of by getting the wins that I mentioned. And the last team I want to point out, and I think this team is the most dangerous bid stealer to monitor during championship week, and that's Colorado State and Nico Medved. Now, Colorado State started out this season at 5-5, and it looked like a little bit of a lost year after losing Isaiah Stevens from last year's team that went all the way to the NCAA tournament, beat Virginia in the first 4, and lost to Texas. But credit to Nico Medved, who has rallied his basketball team. In the last 21 games, Colorado State is 17-4. Colorado State also has a star and a player that could take over the Mountain West Conference tournament this week in Nick Clifford. Had a huge game, scoring 30-plus points when Boise State lost to Colorado State last Friday. Colorado State, if you're asking me for a bid steal this week during championship week, looks like to me it would be the best bet. Now, again, I want to remind you, we're going to hear from Kelvin Sampson later on in the show, but I want you to get in this chat, hit the like button. Please give us your thoughts, give us your opinions. I will be getting to you in just a little bit. Jon Rothstein hanging out here on this maiden voyage on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. We'll get to your thoughts and questions when we return. And remember, this is March.
Who's in? Who's out? Let the madness begin. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. Want, obviously, everybody to weigh in right now as we get through some of your comments and questions. Smash that like button. Philip wants to know, John, does Delaware have a chance today? Well, Delaware is going to be playing on CBS Sports Network later tonight against UNC Wilmington in the CAA title game, 7 o'clock tip. I'll be in studio for that. Want to point this out. Delaware's in a situation where you have a tremendous destiny kind of versus, I don't want to say dynasty with UNC Wilmington, but you have an unsung team in Delaware, a team that for all intents and purposes, you know, has come from nowhere, 16-19 against a UNC Wilmington team that has been knocking on the door under Takeo Siddle and has won over 25 games. Fascinated to see how this works out here tonight. Next question is going to come from our friend Daniel Roach. And it's, John, how far does Xavier need to go in the Big East tournament to get a bid? Well, I was going to talk about this later in the show. Xavier is a team that, for all intents and purposes, needs to have its resume scrutinized a little bit more. Because Xavier, to me, lost big games early that were big opportunities. Home against Marquette, the team they're playing in the Big East tournament on Thursday, and then at UConn, a game that went to overtime without Zach Fremantle, who's obviously one of the best players on this basketball team. Xavier, if it wins against Marquette on Thursday in the Big East tournament, will be in a situation where it will be a lock for the NCAA tournament. Kalen Krettel saying, Bradley, I love Nova, but there's no chance of it moving up outside of an automatic bid. We know that it's AQ or bust for Villanova. Eli Case wants to say, what do you think of VCU going on a big run if they're in the tournament, depending on their draw? Eli, this is what I'll tell you, and I've said this time and time again. I think that VCU could win games in the tournament and advance if it got to the NCAA tournament and heard its name on Selection Sunday. But the facts are the facts right now. We've got a situation where VCU is 25-6. VCU, I think you could make the case, might have the best perimeter that the Atlantic 10 has seen since Dan Hurley's team at 2018 in his last year at Rhode Island won a game in the NCAA tournament and lost to Duke in the round of 32. VCU is a really, really good basketball team. VCU does not have an at-large resume to the NCAA tournament. VCU is going to have to win the A-10 tournament this week in Washington, D.C. And that's just something that has happened, consistently throughout the last 10 years in the Atlantic 10, a league that 11 years ago, if we remember, had 6 bids in the NCAA tournament, and 12 years ago in 2013 had 5 bids. Boston Boy 907 wants to know, John, which projected double-digit seed do you think is the best shot at making the second weekend? Well, look, I don't have all the double-digit seeds yet. There's a couple of teams that I'm going to keep a close eye on. I think if we're looking at the projections right now, and let's bring up our buddy Jerry Palm's projections because we're always looking up double-digit seeds. I mean, there's going to be power conference teams you're going to look really, really closely at, obviously. Arkansas is a power conference team that's currently projected to be a double-digit seed. Drake is going to be a trendy upset pick on Selection Sunday. There's no doubt about that. Indiana could be a double-digit seed who has played, obviously, great basketball since it was announced that Mike Woodson would not return next year. These are all things that we have to monitor as we get closer and closer and closer. Philip wants to know, should UNC even be considered for a tournament spot? Well, Philip, every day for the rest of this week, I am going to be doing a bracket. And I'm going to be doing a bracket projection. I will post it every single day at 9 o'clock Eastern on collegehoopstoday.net. I'll also tweet it out. And North Carolina, at least as of right now, as I worked on tomorrow's bracket, is going to be the second team out. Boise State would be the first team out. But North Carolina only has one quad one win. That came in the CBS Sports Classic against UCLA in December, a game that UCLA gave away. Sky Clark missed a couple of front ends of a 1-and-1. So now we're looking at a scenario where North Carolina, in my opinion, in order to put together an at-large resume, would have to go and run the table in the ACC tournament. By the time the Tar Heels might have a good enough resume, they would have already won the ACC tournament. It's ACC tournament or bust for the North Carolina Tar Heels. And this is another thing that I just keep going through more and more this time of year as we're diving in to everything that's going on with the NCAA tournament. We have to be in a situation where we have to take a long, hard look at anybody who is mentioning NCAA tournament expansion. Because as somebody who covers the sport, as somebody who is immersed in this 365 days a year, when you really break out a fine-tooth comb and you are going through at-large resumes like a CPA doing a tax return on April 14th, you can see how bad the resumes are for the teams that are trying to get into the NCAA tournament. There are teams limping at the back of the bracket. And again, I know each and every year I feel like I talk about how soft the bubble is. But to me, it's worse this year than it's been in a number of years. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Jeff Goldblum said in the film The Lost World in 1997 that taking dinosaurs off this island was the worst idea in the long, sad history of bad ideas, expanding the NCAA tournament will be much worse. And remember, there is one tweak I would make to the NCAA tournament. Not expand it, but there is one tweak I would make. Got to get a sip of some water right here. You don't realize how verklempt you get when you talk for 26 minutes straight. I believe if you are good enough to earn an automatic qualifier to the NCAA tournament and you're a mid-major league, you deserve the right to be on the Thursday or Friday of the NCAA tournament. That's what I believe. You've earned the right to be in that Thursday and Friday. Now, I'm saying this, and I'm not just saying this because I've had the blessed assignment to work the first four for the last couple of years. I'm going to do it again this year, next week in Dayton. But I think if those AQs went to the round of 64 and you put the last 8 at-large teams in Dayton, you would have much more buzz and much more pop to the start of the NCAA tournament. That's the only thing I'm touching with the NCAA tournament. That's the only move I want to make. All AQs go to Thursday and Friday. And then on top of that, we have a scenario where the last 8 at-larges start in Dayton. You know, for years, okay, I have been a loyal Android guy. And I've been Droid for life. Now, like once or twice a year, I, for whatever reason, could not send text, could not receive text from iOS and so on and so forth. And for me, somebody who depends on their phone for their living, you get a little bit, fatutzt. You get a little bit, of agita. So a couple of weeks ago, I was not getting texts from my wife. I was not getting texts from other people who had iPhones. I was trying to text people in the studio on CBS Sports Network to make sure everything was going in smoothly. And there was a 4 or 5 second delay. And, I'm starting to, sweat. I'm starting to have a little, palpitations and so on and so forth. So I made the move from an Android to an iPhone. And now I'm learned that I was able to text people from my keyboard. This is an absolute game changer. But it's not a game changer when you find out that your 18-month-old who has hand, mouth, and foot and is out of daycare and is binge watching Frozen is in a scenario right now where she's eating crayons in your apartment. And this is, again, I know I vented last time I was here about the issues that I had when my daughter, who I love dearly, spilled blueberries. But these are the updates I'm getting right now, and it can come to my computer. I wouldn't have looked on my phone because I'm busy with the show. But again, it's the craziest time of year. It's nonstop. You're up late watching the WCC tournament. And on top of that, you have to deal with, the relay from your significant other that, your daughter is eating crayons in your apartment. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. What do you want me to do in that situation? So people told me before I became a parent that you will understand when you have kids. You will understand the importance and the significance of things differently. I thought I knew. I had no idea. It's a lot easier to deal with what I'm doing right now than it is to be in a New York City apartment where Frozen is being binged and you have an 18-month-old eating crayons. It's not anarchy. It's just parenthood. Houston's Kelvin Sampson coming up next right here.
Dave, what are you doing here?
Not exactly the warm welcome I'd get down at Augusta National.
Oh, did you see that?
A tradition unlike any other. The Masters on CBS.
(27-4) after winning the Big 12 regular season title outright for the second consecutive year. We're now joined by the head coach of the Cougars, Kelvin Sampson, a man who has become synonymous with the month of March. And Kelvin, welcome. What does March mean for you?
It's graduation day in some ways. Your new kids get here in June. Your returning players are with them for the first time when summer school starts, usually that first Monday in June. And then you're in all your classes through the summer. Then once you get to September, it gets a little more serious. We start taking midterms. Then October, November, you're getting ready for games. November represents the start of a new season. And then just build. You build, you fall down, you get back up, you build some more. You may fall down again. But ultimately, by the time you get to Christmas, John, the outline of who you are is coming into play. And so when you start conference play, you kind of know where the pitfalls are, strengths and weaknesses of your team, and just keep building. And by the time you get to March, it's exciting. I'm excited for a guy like Milos Uzan, who's never played in the tournament. I'm excited for Mercy and Chase and Cordell, who's never seen the NCAA tournament. So just a lot of excitement. You can tell that Selection Sunday's right around the corner, because everything these kids do, they're a little more giddy. They're excited.
Now, you mentioned some guys who are going to experience the NCAA tournament for the first time, but you have several players back from last year's team that was a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But you don't have Jamal Shed back, who was one of the great leaders we've seen in recent years in college basketball. But your team is still 27-4. I know you have really high expectations for yourself and your program, but have you exceeded your own expectations with this group?
I think we just try to meet our standards every day. I think what we try to do, whether we're really good at it or not, depends on the interpretation, I guess. But we've always gotten our kids and coaching staff to focus on exactly what's in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And while in your business and fans have fun projecting or guessing 2 games down the road, we've always just stayed in the moment. And I think that's what good teams have to do. You can't think about, well, we got to win this one because look who we play next. We don't think that way. We play the game we play. I remember I was watching Troy last night cut down the nets to get the tournament. I remember how we played against Troy early in the year, and we struggled with them. Scott Cross is an excellent coach. They play a style that's not easy to play against, but all those is part of the process to get to be a good team. You're not going to play against teams that play like you all the time. So you got to get outside your comfort zone. But just stand in the moment, focusing on the game in front of you, and get your team to be a team. I think those were my expectations. I didn't have numerical or end of the year record or Big 12 championship. Sure, those are always the goal. But if that's all you're talking about, you're losing sight of what's most important, and that's today's struggles, today's battle. Today's the day we have to win today. So this team became good at that once we established who our leaders were.
Well, another thing about this team that really stands out is the quality depth that you have off the bench. When was the last time you had this many options in reserve?
Probably the team that lost to Kentucky when Tyler Hero hit that 3 that beat us with about 30 seconds to go. I think we were up 3 under a minute to go, and Kentucky made a couple of tough shots. We had a couple of tough possessions, but that team had Dejan Giroux and Nate Hinton coming off the bench at the guard spots, and then we had Bryson Gresham and Fabian White, Justin Gorham. I can't remember who started, but we had a good bench. That team was deep, but this is the deepest team we've had since then.
You've had really good guards during your tenure at Houston, and really the question was at the start of the season, who was going to be Houston's go-to guy? And in the last couple of weeks, LJ Cryer has taken his game to a completely different level. What has allowed him to morph and what he's morphed into here over the last couple of weeks?
I think maturity and how serious he takes practice. When we got back from Vegas and we were 4-3, and we looked at the big picture of why we were 4-3. The thing that I remember is Milo's fractured his nose and had to have surgery, and he missed 3 weeks prior to us leaving to go. And I think he wound up fouling out. He fouled out of the Auburn game, he fouled out of the Alabama game, and he fouled out of the San Diego State game. He was out of shape. He wasn't ready to go. Javier Francis missed 19 consecutive days of practice with a groin. So I knew our team was going to get better as we went because we needed to get healthy. But playing Auburn was such a great experience for us because we didn't lose that game. We got beat. They beat us. They were better than us that night. Alabama, we had the ball to win the game in regulation, called timeout. I think it's whatever many seconds left, but we had the last shot. Didn't make it, goes to overtime. But Nelson, Sears, Diabate, you could tell they were an excellent team. Then San Diego State, just tough. They were really tough, but all three of those games helped us. Yeah. So once we got back, I sat down and had a talk with LJ, and I said, LJ, you've got to stop sitting in the back seat or the front seat. You got to get under the steering wheel, man. Mm-hmm. You've got to have your voice heard. You've got to hold some guys accountable, just because you never have a bad practice. He never does. He and Marcus Sasser are so similar in how serious they take each day. And you like to see kids have success that have earned it. LJ has really earned the right to succeed. Now, J1 has been a fixture in this program for so many years. Yeah. But the leader of this team this is J1's team, but our leader has been LJ. But those two guys combined as seniors have carried us, especially on the road.
You know, you mentioned J'Wan Roberts, and there was a beautiful moment between you and him at senior day recently, and your emotions came over you, and you guys embraced in an incredible hug. And you hold a high standard to everybody, to your players, to your coaches, to everybody because of what you've created at Houston. But it was so unique to see the other side of you during that moment. What came over you at that time?
Oh, I think, as coaches, we don't have to be their life, but they are our life. They are why we're here. I don't have, my family and my faith have always been important to me, but my hobbies don't come after that. My enjoyable moments in life don't really come after that. My players and my team come next. I'm committed to them. And J1's unique. We redshirted him his first year. So we knew he was going to have 5. And then because of COVID, it gave him an extra year. And he could have left and went elsewhere, but he decided to stay. He invested in us. And when you have an investment that goes both ways and there's an ironclad commitment both ways, that was more of an appreciation for that kid sticking with us and having success at the end. And seeing his mother and his father and his sisters and his family there, seeing that, I got emotional, but it was out of love and the mutual respect we have for each other.
Kelvin, Houston right now is on the verge of being a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament for the 3rd straight season. You've built one of the nation's best programs. And I know that the thing that you're chasing is the only thing you haven't accomplished in your coaching career, and that's winning a national championship. How often does that thought cross your mind about winning a national title?
Well, I was texting with Tom Izzo the other night, and we were I came across something on my phone about Judd Heathcote, and I sent it to Tom, and he sent me a long text back, and we were just talking about our journeys from Judd getting us started. And of course, Tom is Judd Senior now. And where we started, and we're both, the sun is setting on our careers. We don't know how much time we have left. But I think as my career is winding down here, John, Would I like to have a national championship? I think, and please understand, I mean this with all seriousness. I see what our players go through. I think if we won a national championship, I would be more happy for our players, but not me. You know, my career doesn't need to have one for me. Now, other people may have to have it to validate me in their mind, but relationships I've built through the years with our players at every school I've coached, having two grandkids that I absolutely adore and love spending time with, I've learned to enjoy life a little bit more. Like to make a good run at it, but like when Jamal sprained his ankle, you know how fragile it is. You
Yep.
know how easy it could come and it could go. So if God blesses us with that opportunity, that would be awesome. And I'd be happy for my family and my players and all my former players. But if it doesn't happen, I'm still the most blessed guy in the world when it comes to coaching basketball.
Well, let's wrap on this. Starting with this week's Big 12 tournament, what are the biggest keys to Houston having a chance to get back to a Final Four and maybe winning that elusive national title?
I think staying locked in on scouting reports, little things. Our staff does an awesome job in preparing our kids with our scouts and having our kids play fearless. Be fearless. I remember talking about that in the huddles on the road in Tucson when we played Arizona. Be fearless in taking that shot. Shoot it. Don't shoot it and hope it goes in.
Right.
Shoot it and know that if it doesn't go in, we got a chance to go get the offense, rebound, and tip it in. But just shoot that shot. And LJ stepped back and hit two big threes down the stretch. Milo's made a big three. But I want us to continue to play with a fearlessness and a confidence that it's like those old westerns when guys come off that cattle drive and they couldn't wait to get to the saloon to get whatever it is they were looking for, but they swing those doors open and they walk in there and just want to fight somebody. But that's an attitude, man. So I want our guys to swing those doors open and look for a fight and be fearless.
Well, Kelvin, we appreciate a couple minutes, know how busy you are. Safe travels to Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament, and as always, look forward to staying connected with you along the way.
Always good to be on with you, John. Appreciate everything you do for college basketball, brother.
You got it. That's Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson. We will be back after this.
Who's in? Who's out? Let the madness begin. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, thanks to Kelvin Sampson from Houston for joining us. Jon Rothstein back here on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. 4 NCAA tournament bids on the line tonight in the CAA on CBS Sports Network. I'll be in studio for that. UNC Wilmington against Delaware. Again, UNC Wilmington, 25-plus wins. Delaware, 16-19, but an incredible run right now under Martin Inglesby. Andy Toole and Robert Morris will play Youngstown State in the Horizon League tournament title game. Central Connecticut and St. Francis, PA in the Northeast Conference. And then in the West Coast Conference, Gonzaga against St. Mary's. And two guards nationally that do not get enough attention, in my opinion. Gonzaga's Ryan Nembhard, who probably has not gotten the same type of ink that he would have gotten if this was a vintage Gonzaga type team in terms of their NCAA tournament seed. But Ryan Nembhard is on a run right now in terms of his ability to set the table that is second to none in college basketball. I stayed up late. I watched Gonzaga last night against San Francisco, and I continue to be mesmerized by this guy's ability to set the table for his teammates. And again, this is not a vintage Gonzaga team, but they are getting vintage point guard play from Ryan Nembhard, who has 39 assists to just 7 turnovers in his last 3 games. St. Mary's swept Gonzaga 2-0 in the regular season. Now, one big bubble game to monitor later this week, and I talked about this in the chat a couple minutes ago. It's the Thursday game between Xavier and Marquette. Marquette, obviously, comfortably in the NCAA tournament. Xavier, to me, is in a win-and-in type situation. Zach Freemantle did not play when these two teams met earlier in the season at the Cintas Center. It was a 1-possession loss for Xavier. Freemantle had 14-10 when the teams met in Milwaukee, and Xavier won the game. And I want to wrap on this, and I talked about it a little bit earlier in this show, the bubble's worse than it's ever been. So when you see things on social media, when you see things that people are talking about the NCAA tournament expanding, just remember, it would be the worst idea in the long, sad history of bad ideas. One thing that's not the worst idea in the long, sad history of bad ideas, at least I hope, starting this venture. Had an awesome time today. I will be back again on Thursday. Keep posted to social media for the exact start time. Jon Rothstein here with you on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. I will talk to you in less than 48 hours. And remember, this is March.